welcome back. So we're almost halfway through the book here. Today we're doing Sadhana Sutra 19. viśeṣāviśeṣa-liṅga-mātra-aliṅgāni, guṇa-parvāṇi. viśeṣāviśeṣa-liṅga-mātra-aliṅgāni, guṇa-parvāṇi. Particular, specific, non-specific, archetypal, universal, a mere mark, and without mark or differentiating characteristic. Of the gunas, stages of development, states. The stages of the gunas are the particular, the universal, the differentiated, and the undifferentiated. The nature of the three gunas, which was indicated in the last sutra, is further elaborated in this sutra. The gunas, according to this sutra, have four states or stages of development. The nature of the three gunas, which was indicated in the last sutra, is further elaborated in this sutra. The gunas, according to this sutra, have four states or stages of development, corresponding to the four stages of samprajñāta samadhi, mentioned in section 1, Sutra 17. As consciousness and matter work together in the phenomenal world, it is to be expected that the expression of the deeper layers of consciousness should require a subtler form of the three gunas. The essential nature of the gunas remains the same, but they undergo a kind of subtilization, matching, as it were, each of these deeper or finer states of consciousness and enabling these to be expressed through matter. An illustration from the field of science will perhaps enable the student to understand this relation between the states of consciousness and the stages of the gunas. Sound can be transmitted through a comparatively heavy medium like air, but light, which is a much finer vibration, requires for its transmission a subtler medium like ether or ether. I always say ether. I've always said ether, but I guess the correct way to say it is ether. As the states of consciousness which the yogi has to pass through in samadhi before he is released from the domination of the gunas are four, there should naturally be four stages of the gunas. While it is easy to understand why there should be four stages, still, when we come to the nature of these stages as defined in the present sutra, we find some difficulty in grasping the subtle significance of the words used for these stages. Since these stages correspond to the four stages of the unfoldment of consciousness in samadhi, let us see whether we can find some help in studying these correspondences. The characteristics of the four states of consciousness, the stages of the gunas, and the vehicles through which these states of consciousness find expression are shown in the following table. Or, I don't know where I'm going to put it. Characteristics of the states of consciousness. So there's vitarka, vikara, ananda, and asmita. Stages of the gunas, viśeṣa, aviśeṣa, linga, and alinga. And then the vehicle for expression in Vedantic terminology is manomaya kosha, vijnanamaya kosha, anandamaya kosha, and atma. All right. The four stages of samprajñāta samadhi have already been discussed in dealing with Sutra 17 from the first section. And it has been shown that these stages correspond to the functioning of consciousness through the four vehicles as shown above. When the stages of the gunas are studied in the light of these correspondences, the meanings of the words which are used to denote these stages become clear to some extent, though it is impossible to grasp their full significance on account of the limitations of the intellect and the physical brain. Let us do the best we can under our present limitations. The word viśeṣa means particular, and the viśeṣa stage of the gunas obviously refers to the stage of the lower mind, which sees all objects only as particular things with names and forms. To the lower mind, every object seems to have a separate and independent existence and a separate identity. It is isolated, seen apart from its archetype and from the divine consciousness of which it is a part and in which it is embedded, as it were. This stage of the gunas corresponds to the vitarka stage of samadhi, because while consciousness is functioning through the lower mind, vitarka is its most important and essential function. Vitarka is that activity of the lower mind through which it differentiates a particular object from all others. How do we differentiate a particular dog, for example, from all other objects in the phenomenal world? The mental process may be illustrated by the following line of reasoning. A particular dog, say Bonzo, is a living animal. This differentiates it from all inanimate objects. Bonzo is an animal of the canine species. This differentiates it from all other species. Bonzo is a fox terrier. This differentiates it from dogs of other breeds. We can, in this way, narrow down the range of objects from which Bonzo has still to be differentiated until we come down to the last stage, when the object has been completely isolated in the mind and stands apart as a particular object in the universe, different and distinguishable from all other objects. This isolation or differentiation of a particular object, which is illustrated by the crude example given above, is called vitarka, and it is through such a process that the first stage of samadhi is reached. The student will also see from the above the significance of the word viśeṣa, particular, in indicating the first or crudest stage of the gunas. Then we come to the next stage, aviśeṣa, which means universal or non-specific. This corresponds to the activity of the higher mind, whose function is to deal with universals, archetypes, and principles, which underlie the world of names and forms. The lower mind deals with particular objects with names and forms, the higher mind with abstract ideas and archetypes. Reverting to the previous illustration, we saw that Bonzo was a particular dog of a particular breed. But what is this thing, dog, of which Bonzo is a particular representative? The word dog stands for an abstract idea. From observation of a large number of dogs, we isolate all the characteristics which constitute their doghood and combine them in a single concept, which we denote by the word dog. Every common noun is such an abstraction, although we are hardly aware of this fact when we use such words. The mental process whereby these qualities are isolated from particular objects and combined in a single abstract concept is called vikara. The function of the higher mind is to form such universal concepts and to grasp their inner significance. It should be noted here that while vitarka isolates a particular object from all the rest, vikara isolates a particular concept, archetype, law, or universal principle from all such sukshma visayas referred to in Section 1, Sutra 44. This stage, in which consciousness is functioning through the higher mind, corresponds to the vikara stage of samprajñāta samadhi and the aviśeṣa stage of the gunas. The justification for using the word aviśeṣa, universal, for the second stage of the gunas will be seen to a certain extent from what has been said above. It may be pointed out here that the simple mental process of vitarka or vikara, which we may engage in during the course of our studies and thinking, should not be considered equivalent to the corresponding mental processes as they take place in the state of samadhi. In the state of samadhi, the mind is completely isolated from the outer world, is fused, as it were, with the object in a state of abstraction. It is in a peculiar and to the ordinary man incomprehensible state. And so, concrete and abstract thinking are merely faint reflections, qualitative representations of the extremely subtle mental processes which take place in samadhi. The reason why words like vitarka and vikara are used to indicate these subtle mental processes lies in the fact that the ordinary reasoning processes are familiar to the student, and it is only in this way that he can get some idea of the subtler processes. From the known to the unknown is always the right method of advancing in the realm of the mind. Then we come to the next stage of the gunas, linga. This word means a mark which serves to identify, and in the present context, linga-mātra means a state of consciousness in which particular objects and even principles are mere marks or signs which serve to distinguish them from other objects. This stage of the gunas corresponds to the supramental consciousness, which transcends the intellect and is expressed through buddhi or intuition. The corresponding stage in samadhi is accompanied by ananda, which confirms the conclusion that this stage of the gunas corresponds to the functioning of consciousness through the buddhic vehicle, or anandamaya kosha, as it is called in Vedantic terminology. But why is this stage of the gunas called linga? Because in the corresponding state of consciousness, all objects and universal principles become part of a universal consciousness. They are seen, embedded as it were, in one consciousness, as parts of an indivisible whole. But they still have their identity, are still distinguishable or recognizable. Each object is itself and yet part of a whole. It is a condition of unity in diversity. The next and the last stage of the gunas is called a linga, or without mark or differentiating characteristic. In this stage, the objects and principles lose their separate identity. Consciousness becomes so predominant that they go out of focus, as it were. According to the highest conceptions of the Hindu philosophy, all objects, archetypes, everything in the manifest universe is a modification of consciousness, Brahma vritti. In the linga stage, awareness of objects exists side by side with the awareness of consciousness. In the alinga stage, the former go out of focus, and only awareness of the divine consciousness of which they are modifications remains. A concrete example may perhaps help the student to understand the significance of the different stages of the gunas. Suppose we have a number of objects made of gold, a ring, a bracelet, and a necklace, placed on a table. We may see them merely as separate objects, as a child would see them. This corresponds to the viśeṣa stage. We may see them as ornaments with a common function of serving to adorn the human body, as a woman would see them. This is the aviśeṣa stage. We may see them as objects with a common decorative function, but we may also be interested in the fact that they are made of gold. For instance, we see their common substratum and their separate identity simultaneously, as a goldsmith would see them. This corresponds to the linga stage. And lastly, we may see only the gold and may hardly be conscious of their separate identities or common function, as a thief would see them. This is analogous to the alinga stage. In this stage, the yogi is conscious chiefly of the substratum of all phenomenal objects, particular or universal. He is aware predominantly of the divine consciousness in which they are merely vrittis or modifications. The objects as separate entities do exist, but they have ceased to have any meaning for him. This stage of the gunas corresponds to the last stage of samprajñāta samadhi, of which asmita is the predominant characteristic. The consciousness of pure existence, which is denoted by asmita, swallows up the consciousness of objects. The progressive expansion of consciousness, which takes place when it passes through the different stages of samadhi, does not mean that these states of consciousness are separate from each other by watertight compartments and the lower aspects of object disappear when the higher come into view. Many students feel confused because they suffer from a common misconception about the functioning of consciousness in the higher worlds. They think, for example, that when the yogi passes into the world of the higher mind, he lives solely in a world of abstract ideas, archetypes, and principles with no objects having names and forms with which he can be familiar. Such a world of pure abstractions would be an impossible world to live in and does not exist anywhere in the experiences of all mystics and occultists testify, as the experiences of all mystics and occultists testify. The higher always includes and enriches the lower, though it also enables the lower to be seen in its correct perspective. It transcends and includes. What was considered important may now appear unimportant, or what was considered insignificant may now assume tremendous significance, and vice versa. But everything is there within the expanded consciousness, and the yogi does not therefore feel he has entered into a strange an incomprehensible world. On the other hand, every expansion of consciousness makes him see greater richness, beauty, and significance in everything which is within the range of his perception. Expansion of consciousness means inclusion of more, and exclusion of nothing. This fact is quite clear from what is stated in section 350 and 55 and section 431. So let's go to those. So Vibhuti-pada 50 and 55. Vibhuti-pada 50 is Sattva Purushanyata Kiyati Matrasya Sarva Bhava Dishtatrutvam Sarva Dhyatrutvam Cha. Only from the awareness of the distinction between sattva and purusha arise supremacy over all states and forms of existence, omnipotence, and knowledge of everything, omniscience. And 55 is Tarakam Sarva Vishayam Sarvata Vishayam Akramam Cheti Vivekajam Jnanam. The highest knowledge born of the awareness of reality is transcendent, includes the cognition of all objects simultaneously, pertains to all objects and processes whatsoever in the past, present, and future, and also transcends the world process. And the other one is 31. Tada sarva varana malapetasya jnanasya nantyaj yayam alpam. Then, in consequence of the removal of all obscuration and impurities, that which can be known through the mind is but little in comparison with the infinity of knowledge obtained in enlightenment. Okay. It will be seen that the four stages of the gunas are denoted by the predominant nature of the mental perception and activity which characterizes those stages. We are told how the changes in the gunas affect the expression of consciousness through them, but we are not given any indication as to the nature of the changes in the gunas themselves. This kind of classification, which is based upon the secondary effects of the changes in the gunas, does not therefore throw much further light on the nature of the gunas themselves. Since the gunas lie at the very basis of the manifested universe and their roots are embedded in the deepest layers of consciousness, their subtle nature can be realized only in samadhi. The intellect can, at best, enable us to gain only a general idea with regard to their nature and their gross expressions on the lowest plane. Okay, so I'm going to stop there for now. That was Sutra 19. Sutra 20 is, the seer is pure consciousness, but though pure, appears to see through the mind.